welcome to Anonymous Confessions series. In this episode, we will hear the confessions of kids who hate their fathers and for good reasons. All I ask is to listen, read, and enjoy all the while dropping your thoughts. I'm also going to share my email ID in the description box should you choose to share your anonymous confessions to be posted on my channel with your identity completely hidden. Hit the subscribe button and like and share, as it will not only motivate me to continue to make such videos, but will also mean the world to me. Let's start. My dad was an alcoholic who didn't work, and after his business failed, he completely gave up on life. Most nights, he was either at home drinking or out at some bar, and sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. So my mom became everything for my brother and me, working 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. I was 9 when my dad disappeared, and I still remember my mother crying silently at night, trying to stay strong for us. Strangely, over the years, things got better without him. No more stolen money, no more chaos. I took up small jobs, my brother helped neighbors, and we somehow managed to build a stable life. I eventually went to college, got a job in operations, and for the first time, I was able to tell my mom to quit working so hard. My brother started playing soccer and was actually good at it, and for once, we felt like a normal, happy family. Then one day, an email arrived from my dad's mother. She said he had changed, gotten clean, and married a God-fearing woman, and they now had 2 kids. That alone made my blood boil, but the last part hit harder. He was trying from kidney failure and needed a donor, and she specifically asked me because I am his eldest child. I looked at my mom and could see the conflict in her face, but I immediately said no and moved on. A week later, my mom called me home urgently. When I arrived, there was a brand new Mercedes parked outside, and inside was Patricia, his new wife, sitting in our living room like she belonged there. She showed me his medical reports, told me they had searched everywhere for a donor, then asked me to for at least visit him in the hospital. I lost my patience and told her to leave and never come back. She started crying and shouting, and I threatened to call the police. After that, his mother kept trying to contact us, but I ignored every call because that man stopped being my father the day he walked out on us. And as far as I'm concerned, he's been dead ever since. My little brother, who was a giant pain in the butt, once pushed me down the stairs. And as the elder sister, I was expected to be understanding, mature, basically a saint in human form. I tolerated a lot, but things went too far when he cut my Barbie's hair and then crushed them with his shoes like he was auditioning for Villain of the Year. I was furious, so I did what any responsible child would do. I told my mom. She laughed, and gave him a soft little "Don't do that again," as he had mildly inconvenienced someone, not destroyed their entire childhood. That's when I knew if justice wasn't coming, I would have to deliver it myself. So I waited. I studied him, his habits, his routines, his tiny predictable brain, and then one day I made my move. Every time he wasn't looking, I would do things only he could possibly do in our household, as I was basically a nerd who never left her room unless for school or simply it was absolutely necessary. His new toy car, 2 wheels are gone by the evening. His white canvas shoes had mud bed stains all over it. His favorite pencil, broken in 2. His favorite anime t-shirt had mossy green paint all over it. Nothing obvious, nothing provable. My parents believed it was him doing it. At first, he tried to ignore it. Then he started noticing and became rather loud and a crybaby. He would scream and complain to my parents, who coddled him with new stuff, which made him satisfied for a bit. But I never let his new stuff remain in good condition for more than a day or 2, just like he did with mine. And I would just sit there, calm, innocent, always had my poker face on, and occasionally shushing him and giving my stuff to him when my parents were looking, of course. Over the next few days, I escalated. I would hide things just long enough for him to panic, then find them like a hero. He stopped trusting his memory. He started checking everything twice. Once he even blamed himself. And that was the moment I knew I had gone too far. But also far enough. He never touched my Barbies again. And plus point, my parents never suspected a thing, and neither did he. My grandmother never really liked me, and since mom and I lived with her, she would always babysit me rather coldly and strictly. Mom had me when she was 16, so I could understand grandma's rage, but boy, did she overdo every dramatic act that I could count on my fingers. She would always make sure to let me know that I was an unwanted one and made my life at home a living hell. When I told my mom, she just told me to get over it, as grandma was only angry with us and actually meant no harm. With no choice, I had to suck it up and suffer through years of it. My mom eventually got a promotion at her job and she began to stay rather busy. I was an average kid, not much of a troublemaker, and had two or three friends who were dear to me. I remember in middle school, my friend Barbara came over to give me my notebook as I had forgotten it at school. I invited her in, and suddenly my grandmother lost her shit. She literally screamed at her, which made her cry and run away from there. To say I was dumbfounded and horrified would be an understatement of the century. My grandmother remained furious, which started to annoy me. I couldn't tell my mom about it, as she would come home rather late at night and leave early. Not to mention, I didn't want to stress her out even more, as my grandmother always bickered about the increase in bills, groceries, and everything else, even though my mom also contributed equally to every bill. I obviously went to apologize to my sweet friend the very next day, and she forgave me. But I could see the poor girl was traumatized. The next evening, my grandmother told me to never let any girl enter her household again. Her eyes were red and her words were sloppy, indicating that she had been drinking heavily again, and the reason was sitting on the sofa chair. A middle-aged man named Hank was dating Grandma, and he looked fresh out of prison. At first, I tried to ignore her words, but then she suddenly grabbed my collar to make her point clear. I answered loudly to satisfy her, but deep down I knew I couldn't stay with her anymore. The following evening, Hank knocked on my door, which startled me as it had never happened before. None of Grandma's previous lovers had ever bothered me, but this guy ordered me to make him a sandwich like I was his slave. I told him to shove it and locked my room. The next thing I knew, Grandma was banging on my door like a mad woman, cursing and shouting. She was clearly drunk and I was scared, so I snuck out of the window. Luckily, my room was on the ground floor and made a run for my life. I informed my mom, who got worried but wasn't fast enough to come to my rescue as she was very busy with her work. My grandmother greatly apologized when she was sobered up and promised to never to do that again, but I knew it was a lie. That old woman never really liked me, and my mom would never leave the house, as she wasn't saving enough for a new one. So I took matters into my own hands. I started secretly recording her wrongdoings, her misbehavior, and of course Hank, who was always there too. So I had to take a revenge on him as well. All I did was stay in the kitchen and perfectly face the camera hidden behind the plant pot one evening, where my back was visible and Hank could be clearly seen sitting on the sofa. Once again, he ordered me to make something for him, but I repeatedly ignored him. Furious, he came toward me, and when he got close, I screamed. He tried to grab my hand roughly. I was holding a butter knife and poked him with it rather strongly. He screamed, which made Grandma enter the scene with obvious anger. She also tried to mishandle me, but this time I dodged her and pushed her hard enough to make her stumble and then ran for my life. The time, instead of calling my mom, I called 911. And the next thing I knew, both Grandma and Hank got arrested under the charges of mishandling, abusing, and assaulting a minor. I turned in all the tapes, and boy, was I satisfied when I saw my grandmother crying and begging me. My mother was no better though. She felt bad for me, but she was more scared of losing a house in this economy. She even scolded me for going too far. Anyway, now I have no contact with either of them. I graduated top of my class and my parents wasn't there for me. Not because they couldn't make it. I agree my family was far from normal as my mom and dad have never really gotten along and they kept up the act of a happy couple in front of the world. But my younger sister and I knew what was behind the closed door. Years passed and I finally graduated from the school. And for the last time, maybe I wanted my family to be there. Maybe because I knew once I leave my parents' house, I would not come back with the fragile hope I had kept secretly inside of me for years. And that hope was my parents finally being happy together. But that didn't happen. Even though I informed them about a week prior to my graduation, they still didn't show up. Apart from my sister, who was holding a sign for me about how proud she was of me, they didn't call, no explanation, just two empty seats in a row where I had reserved their chairs with handwritten name tags the night before. My teacher noticed. She didn't say anything, just quietly sat in one of those chairs during the ceremony along with my sister, and I pretended not to notice her doing it. I walked across that stage, shook the principal's hand, and smiled genuinely for a photo as my sister and my favorite teacher kept cheering for me. When I got home, my mom was watching TV. She looked up and said, "Oh, how did it go?" Like I had gone to buy groceries. I put my certificate on the kitchen counter, went to my room, and made a decision that day. I would stop performing for people who couldn't be bothered to show up. I moved out at 19, built a career, made a family of people who actually choose to be present in my life, which is my family and my sister. My mom still calls sometimes. She always ends with, "I'm proud of you, right?" I never answered that because pride without presence is just noise. I was 11 the first time I cooked for myself while running a fever. My dad was home. He wasn't working that day. He was just home. But making soup for a sick kid apparently wasn't on his list of things to do. Being a single father was that he hated the most, I guess. I remember dragging myself to the kitchen, barely able to stand, opening a can of beans because that's what I knew how to make. I burned my hand on the pot, sat on the kitchen floor and cried, not from the burn, but from the specific loneliness of being invisible inside your own house. My teacher noticed the bandage the next day and asked what had happened. I said I was clumsy. Kids learn to cover for their parents long before they understand why. I eventually built a stable career for myself. Not much. It's just me, my partner, and my dog now. I have long cut ties with my dad, who never actually gave a damn about me. I wonder if he regrets having me, or is simply grateful that I left for good. Whatever it is, I'm glad now that I don't have to live in constant pressure to impress someone with a good grade or cry myself silently to sleep every night. Every year I brought home a report card. Every year my mother signed it without looking at it. Not once, not twice, for 6 years straight. She would take the pen, flip to the last page, and sign her name. Eyes still on her phone, her show, her conversation. So one year I tested it. I changed one of my grades, not dramatically, just quietly swapped a B for a D in math. She signed it. I changed it back before submitting it to school. The year after, I wrote a small note above the signature line. It said, "I feel invisible at home." She signed it. I stopped writing the notes after that. Not because I gave up, but because I finally understood. It wasn't about me. Her absence was never about me. Now that I'm all grown up, I realize my mother didn't really want to be the mother. She was just doing her job as it was expected her to be there for me. I finally learned that some parents are so consumed by their own unfinished business that their children become background noise. Understanding that didn't fix the wound, but it did stop me from standing at a door that was never going to open. So that's all for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and tell me how you felt about these confessions. I would genuinely love to read your opinions. And once again, if you have any anonymous confessions of your own, feel free to send them to the email given in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.